Do you feel like your business, your team is running around in chaos like a chicken with its head cut off? You have to ask yourself a very simple question. Are you a bad leader? And the answer for 97%, but I'm a marketer, so I'll round it up to 99% of businesses is yes. Your business is a direct reflection of your leadership. And so we're going to talk about the hard truth of being a leader in business, being a CEO, being a founder, operator, where you have to have real transparency with yourself and some honest conversation about what kind of leader are you and how is that impacting your business. Because here's what we've seen in coaching and consulting thousands and thousands of business owners of all different sizes, up to 100 million plus, even beyond that, directly consulting over 100, we've seen that this single thing trips up that 99%, but it is the greatest determining factor of success for the 1%. Leadership and your self-awareness and how you view yourself and your willingness to be honest about your leadership. So before we went live, we were talking about some different aspects. So I want to highlight something and I want to circle back on this because we asked the question, what really determines success in business? Is it leadership? Is it money? And what's the relationship between the two? And one of the things that we all agreed on is great leadership will always lead to a successful business. 100% of the time. It cannot fail. If you have enough money and bad leadership or mediocre leadership, you can still be successful, but only for a time. So let's go back to that because that's a really interesting thought. We've seen businesses, we've been a part of businesses before launching All True, where they had lots of money and you can just keep buying new customers. Mm-hmm. You can manage the perception of the market that you're highly successful, but your most important clients, they leave, they talk. So you have to keep buying and investing into maintaining that facade.
Yeah, you have a rapidly expanding open door policy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really a revolving door. So
Yeah.
I think of that one. But like it's a rapidly expanding revolving door. You spend more money in marketing to get more clients to come in the door, and at the exact same time, the hole at the bottom of your delivery system is also losing more and more clients rapidly. And most likely what's happening is you're losing clients, you're also losing key employees because they're losing faith because they're starting to see all the clients that are churning and burning. Yep. And so because of that, they start jumping ship as well.
Yeah.
Trying to outspend poor characters, like trying to outwork a bad diet.
Ooh, that's a good one. I like that one.
It's another t-shirt.
Yeah, that's another t-shirt right there.
That's another. We call those altruisms, and we will have a book. We will have t-shirts, and that'll be available soon. So stay tuned. But that is very true. So the first question is, why is leadership the number one reason that businesses fail, and how to fix it? And here's the harsh truth. I said it earlier. Your business is a reflection of your leadership, but most business owners, even unknowingly, sabotage their business because of their leadership, and it's probably the single most important thing that most business owners never invest into developing. Because for you to become a better leader, you have to look at all the ugly parts of yourself, your wounds, your personality, the rough edges, and you have to be willing to fix those.
Can you separate the two?
Can you separate the two?
Yeah. Think about some of the bigger businesses. Elon Musk, perfect example. Personal life, not the greatest, not the most. We all heard stories, so I'm not going to go into it. But
Sure.
His professional life clearly is doing well. So can you separate the two, or does at some point in time they bleed it over?
I personally think you can separate the two enough, because you can have solid character but be a bad leader. And leading in a family, it does bleed over, but you don't have to be as transparent or intimate and vulnerable to lead in a business as you do to lead in a family. So you can get away with certain things in business that in your family completely derail your leadership.
Can you though? Or do you think that at some point in time it'll be found out? Because I feel like working with, and I hear a lot of businesses coin the phrase "we are family," and that's a whole other topic of conversation. So I want to go in that rabbit hole because I got strong feelings about that.
Yeah.
But I do think that the working relationship that you have typically with your team that is the closest to you, which is going to be your leadership team, I feel like at some point in time, maybe I'm wrong, but like even in sports, your character, if you're not living your life well one way, it will bleed over into the other life. And at some point in time, it's almost you have to do a really good job compartmentalizing. But even then, what happens in the off day when they bleed over together?
Yeah,
I feel like
no.
it does happen.
You do everything the way you do one thing,
Yeah.
and vice versa. I think it's really hard to separate the two in the sense that ultimately it's going to come to light. I will say that the bigger the organization, the more leadership you can outsource to more capable people.
Mm-hmm.
So you can distance yourself from the day-to-day kind of arbitrage of pulling the levers, but I'm still going to go back to it is nearly impossible, and I've yet to see it, but I'm sure it is possible to outspend a bad character.
Well, we've seen. I mean, I know it's possible because there are a lot of corporations who have outspent bad character.
Well,
and just
only for a season.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think realistically, to Kirk, to your point, the only way to do that and to outspend a bad character is actually to not be the operator.
Mm-hmm.
Be a shareholder. And if you continuously have bad character as you're operating your business, an option, and we've presented this option to several clients, exit.
Yeah.
Or bring in an operator that can own everything that you're doing so that you can sit on the outside and have a monthly meeting and not cause toxicity in the client, in the employees. Because ownership, your relationship will always break into the business.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have to be transparent, and even if you aren't transparent, people infer things. As employees, you can have separation, but as the owner or as a leadership on the executive team, your leadership or your personality, the business is a reflection of that. Your team is a reflection of that. They see everything, they infer things, and they have a right to that because they're staking their entire lives on your ability to make good decisions.
Yep.
And because of that, you have no choice but to be as transparent as you can be, or to provide a level of confidence so that they can make decisions that impact their livelihood.
And I think that's where the insecurity for most small business owners, typically especially if you're under 10 million, but we've seen business owners up to 40, 50 million that still have this insecurity, and it's at different levels and we're going to show you something that we created to help you very clearly understand where you fall in leadership and where you should be and how to course correct when you're operating in the wrong quadrant of leadership, and we'll show you that here in shortly. But it's the letting go of the ego and being willing to realize, let go of your idea of what good leadership is, because for most small business owners, the idea is that, well, great leaders, I'm leading this business and I'm the source of all success. That's actually really poor leadership. Great leadership is you are the leader, inspiring a team of a lot of people who are better, smarter, more creative than you are, and they look to you for inspiration and direction and vision, but you don't control everything, and you're willing to let go of things, and you're consistently admitting and looking for, where am I not strong? And my line that I've said to myself for a long time is, play to your strengths and outsource your weaknesses. So the team was giving me a hard time earlier because even in our company, I've outsourced several things that are a strength for me relative to them, but they're not to the degree that they need to be to hit our goals in the time frame that we need to. So I've outsourced those things. I simply know enough to hire the right person and go through the process to make that successful. And for me, that is what I feel is good leadership. I don't want to run all the things. I don't want that pressure of everything hinging on me. There's still things that hinge on me now that I can't wait to outsource and just be the maestro and lead the team. I want to be the coach. I don't want to be on the field.
Yeah.
But you're always going to be on the field.
Yeah.
I'd say on the sideline. Step on the field during practice, but during the game, I'm on the sideline. I'm directing the team, and I'm relying on the quarterback.
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, the only sport that I watch on a somewhat regular basis
Tim's like arguing, like, I don't watch sports.
is soccer, and from
That's a
what
bad
I've,
example.
That's not a sport.
It's
I'm just kidding.
but it's the perfect
I can
example.
argue.
I don't know if football has the same thing.
To be fair, I don't know football. I just know that part of it for this analogy.
Well, again,
let's
my-
precise. Football actually is the real term, and then soccer is not
yes,
things.
yes,
So,
I understand that, but I
yes.
didn't want to get into that. But on soccer teams, the coach often is one of the better players. He just chooses to coach because he can show the players how to actually do it. You watch recordings of balls going out of bounds.
Yeah.
The coach has some of the best control on the field.
I
don't watch
think
sports
soccer
on a religious
is a
basis.
bad example of that because I think typically in that space, yes, the players are typically the coaches are typically former players. I think, and I'd like to think basketball and football kind of are a little bit different too because I feel like especially with basketball, so I'm a big basketball fan, played it for a long time.
In sports.
But basketball,
I don't know what's happening right now.
Some of the best coaches were not good players, and some of them weren't even players.
I mean, the winningest coaches in most sports never played at the level of the people that they coach.
Sometimes depends on the coach. Yeah, I would agree with that. Depends on the coach.
But
Depends on the sport.
and even if they did, there's a transition point where they become the coach because they can no longer perform at the level of the team, and those coaches, because they were good players, typically build teams of players who outperform anything they ever did.
But they still had a level of execution capability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the point. That's where so many business owners get stuck. Well, I can execute at this level. Right. But is that the level you want your business to be at? Go get someone who can execute at a higher level than you ever have. And someone said it to me, and it's probably a quote from somewhere, I don't know where, but the hallmark of a great leader is that their student, the hallmark of a great master is that the student outperforms the master. They eventually become the master and they become greater. Like if you're a great leader, the people you raise up as leaders should outperform you.
In time.
In time, not immediately.
But when you're first hiring them, you need to accept that they're likely going to do
80,
75 to 80% of
Yeah.
what you did. And you have to be okay with that.
Yep.
Because it takes them time to master and perfect what you do before you completely delegate
Right.
all of it.
And I don't say what you do, but how you do
How
and
you
how
do
you
it.
think.
Yeah.
Because
So-
that's really the big components. You can take off and you can delegate as many tasks as you want to, but the biggest point of failure I've seen in most business owners, you transfer the task and not the industry knowledge.
Yep.
Yeah.
Transferring the knowledge is fairly straightforward. Transferring the why,
That's
that's
and that's hard though, because I do think as a business owner, if you are this is the baby you created and you're great at what you do and you're transferring the why out of you, it takes a secure individual to have to be able to do that and believe that someone still sees value in you after you share that information.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where
100%.
Yeah.
the inspiration comes from.
Yeah. Imagine asking a non-owner to do that.
Um,
That's where leadership comes in key, is when you can ask a non-owner or equity holder to take an emotional equity stake in what you're doing, buy into that bigger vision, and understand that if you, in essence, drain them of their intellectual property, that you will still have value and you will not only elevate them but delegate to them the things that you could only previously do. Now you're duplicating yourself to that 75-80%, and then that's where the multiplication comes in. You're now able to do 3 times as much with the 2 of you versus the 1 times multiple that you had just doing it all yourself, because we're big in home services, so we see a lot of the owners are the best technicians, the best plumbers. That's great until it's not. And when you have a team that knows that they've always got the fallback plan of bringing in the best technician off the bench, are you really leading, or are you actually giving your team a bit of an out, but not allowing them to experience the growing pains of going through the agita of working that out?
Well, and I also think too, it speaks volumes because if you're always having the need to come back in, you're teaching your people you can't do it on your own. You always need me.
Yeah.
So you're not as good as what you think you may be, and that leads ultimately to decline in morale.
I think a lot of business leaders do that because they're of the insecurity
I was going to say, yep.
Yeah.
yeah, they know that if they let it go, we
Back
lost
to the private event.
we lost connection for a second. Okay, we're back. All right. The internet, like, skipped a beat. So, what we were saying was that a lot of business leaders, they get to a point where they don't want to let things go, and they always want to get pulled in because they have the insecurity that if they let it go, they're no longer valued, they're no longer needed. But one of the things I've learned throughout different leaders in life, and you learn this in sports and martial arts and a lot of different spheres of life, eventually you have to transition. I'll use the example of kids. For most of you watching, your parents, you have kids. At some point, your kid becomes an adult, and they no longer need you to step in and do things for them. You don't want to be wiping your 12-year-old's, cleaning your 12-year-old's diaper. You don't want to be changing their diaper. That's just weird and awkward and horrible for a lot of reasons.
Just get them to close the door.
Yeah. What you want to do is transition to where they no longer need you to do for them. They just need your guidance. And then it's about wisdom. So the challenge for you as a parent, as a business leader, it's the same. Continually be growing in your knowledge, your experience, and your wisdom, because then you move into a whole different level. And for us as a company, when we're consulting with the client, our goal, and I'll tell clients this directly, our goal is to work ourselves out of a job, to get you and your team trained up to the level where, as operators, you can run your business. You no longer need us, because I know full well when we get to that point, they don't need us, but we still have value in the experience and wisdom that we can give, which takes them past the point of us teaching them how to execute. So it's seeing the really long term and moving more into that mentor and leadership stage as opposed to the doer. And that's where most businesses get stuck. For some, it's 3 million. For some, it's 10 million. For others, it's 20. So if you're stuck in your business, are you being a bad leader? And why? So we're going to talk about 4 quadrants of leadership, and everything we're talking about here, being a bad leader, not empowering your team, not letting things go, not being vulnerable and humble in your leadership, is all the antithesis of what you want to strive for, which is transformational leadership. So we teach something that we call the transformational leadership matrix, which is this right here. And I'm actually going to move it up there. So when we look at leadership, what this explains and what it shows you is the different quadrants where you could be. Now, if you want to get this, we're going to give this to all of you. So just drop a comment in the Zoom chat, drop a comment on YouTube or Facebook, wherever you are. And then Zach on our team, he'll get in touch with you and then email this over to you. But there's 4 quadrants, and leadership, it always has to do with success and failure. How do you handle success and failure? Do you handle it with humility? Do you handle it with arrogance? And there are 4 different types of leaders. So there's the gracious leader. You handle success with humility, and we'll dive into what that looks like. The resilient leader. You handle failure with humility. Egotistical leader. You handle success with arrogance. And then your self-destructive leader, where you handle failure with arrogance. So I want to start there. Where do you guys see that most business leaders tend to fall? And I'm asking my team. Where do most business leaders tend to fall within this?
That's
That's a little question.
that's a big question. And I would say I'm going to go with a Tim answer. It depends. There's so many seasons and emotions that go into being an entrepreneur, being a business owner, that I think at any given time and any given day of the week, you can find yourself in one or more of these 4 quadrants. And I think it's probably something that I would rather people understand than walk away thinking that they are in one quadrant or another at any given time. Mainly because, and I know I've talked about this before, but being a business owner, it can be a horrifyingly lonely spot.
Yeah.
If you don't have a counterpart, spouse, significant other that you can go to, absent of judgment or concern, and it's just simply a sounding board, you can find yourself suffering in a silo, mainly in silence. But I would also say that there are things that you also find where you get invited. I'll give you an example. I got invited to a nonprofit event with an organization that I've worked with for probably the better part of 5 years now. Everything in me wants to be very gracious and go to that top left quadrant of being just generous in that. It's a one-off event. It does not work with my schedule, but at the same time, it raised my awareness for what they're doing. Does that obviously open myself up to that top right quadrant where there's this integrity part of me, and there's also this, maybe I should shift some things around. Maybe I should take accountability for being a part of this mentorship program. But then again, it's kind of that, well, am I just thinking that I should be involved just because I'm the best option to be involved?
Yeah.
And then I shift down to the lower left. And so
What about if you had to peg it to half a square?
half a square.
Yeah, so rather than it being I'm either operating in success and I'm swapping between humility and arrogance, or I'm operating in failure and the exact same thing, right? If you could coordinate it there, you could probably give a percentage that way.
For sure. And I think that's the juxtaposition of the emotional condition.
Yeah.
It's I'm both arrogant and I'm failing, or I'm humble, but is it really my fault?
Yeah.
Like, we on the disc grid, we call those unicorns. It's these polar opposite sides of what could be deemed two opposite personality types or communication types, but ultimately they can reside in a single person. And again, the entrepreneurial condition is that you're going to be floating in one or more of these at any given time, and sometimes it's at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually think too, depending on your relationship with those around you as well in your business, we are people, so people have favorites, just kind of how things go. And so you may act in one quadrant with someone who is somewhat combative because maybe you have a similar personality, and so you may fall into the arrogant quadrant. You might take a look at some young person that it looks like they're ripe for needing some help and some guidance, and you're like, you know what, let me be generous and help you come along. So it really depends. Also, it shifts on based on who you have interactions with as well.
Yeah.
So let's dive into these and give you guys some more insight into what these look like practically. So we'll start here, looking at the diving into what each of these are. So there's different aspects to it. So this is ideally where you want to be. And we'll actually start with going to where the key behaviors that you want to avoid. So if you're a leader and you find yourself in a position where you're operating out of, we'll start in the quadrant 4, blame shifting. There's failure in the organization. You're shifting blame. And sometimes we mistake blame shifting for holding people accountable. And if you're using words like you should have, why did you, you're most likely blaming. And you're shifting blame to them, getting defensive. We experienced this with a client recently, asked a question, and immediately the tone was defensive. Denial that things are going wrong. This can look in a couple of different ways. And then ego, is ego popping up. And then if you're, when you handle failure, there's the opposite side of humility. Yeah, you take accountability as a leader. You're open to suggestions, which means you're open to collaboration. You maintain integrity. We've seen so many business owners in desperation to generate more revenue or desperation to get out of a situation actually move away from integrity and do things that didn't have integrity, whether it was misleading marketing messaging, it was doing bad deals, it was taking money from clients knowing they couldn't deliver on the service. Things like that.
Shortcuts are the long way.
Yep. Yeah. There's another altruism. Shortcuts are the long way to success, but the quick road to failure.
That is true.
So ask yourself, when you're in failure, how do you respond? And we talk about the 4 phases of the growth cycle. And it's part of our phase 4 operating system that we implement into businesses to help them scale to their first or next 8 figures. And we teach the same thing with those 4 quadrants as we do with this. You're never just in one. You're flowing between all of them. And the whole goal of this is to help you understand, recognize where you're at, and then how do you need to shift. So then in success, you want to be in this place of success and humility, the gracious leader. You're grateful. You're grounded. Meaning you have some success and you don't go buy a Lambo. Maybe you don't go crazy and leave your spouse and go to Vegas and just wild out.
What? That sounds personal.
That's out of his Gen X.
Is that an aspiration right there?
No, that is not an aspiration. That is like cautionary tale of clients who made a bunch of money and then went and bought a bunch of toys. Just blew the money, as opposed to staying grounded. Like someone like me is prone to do that because I grew up with not much. Like getting new clothes was goodwill. It was, my parents worked really hard, but never made a lot of money, which I'm thankful for because it's made me who I am. But I know there was a time as an entrepreneur early on in more my like 20s and 30s where my goal was, when I get to a certain point, I'm gonna buy a Ferrari. Now I couldn't care less about a Ferrari. Like I want a truck. Now it costs the same as a Ferrari. But here's the difference.
You're not winning this argument.
It's the same price. Like it's a $200,000 truck. But the only people who know are truck people. But for me, the Ferrari was a symbol of success. It was status. Now I don't care about that. I want a truck because for me it's practical. I like it, and that's, stay grounded. You can have nice things, but I don't want a 10,000 square foot mansion that has, ivory towers or whatever. I don't know what that would have.
I just want 5,000 square foot.
I want a 5,000 square foot house because that's an appropriate size for my wife, my kids, and then when we have grandkids, we'll probably upsize because then I want to have a playroom and all these things. It's about family. It's not about status and showing off to people.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that is.
You can stay grounded at a affluent level.
Yeah, I don't think it's wrong with that. I think the intention behind it actually is, I think that if I don't think there's anything wrong with having the finer things in life. I think it's about balancing the generosity and the finer things in life. If you are blowing your money and not being generous, I think that's the question to ask yourself is what's in that for you, because typically when people are spending a lot of money, they're trying to fill it with things to bring value to themselves because they feel they lack something.
And that's what I mean by grounded. I mean, a guy who's grounded, when we have just money flowing, I want to go and spend it on my family because that's grounded. Not being grounded is I'm going to go get hair plugs. That to me is not grounded. Because then it's all about the outer. I'm saying a lot of things, so we're going to get back to.
I feel like we're all hearing it for the first time.
I think
including you.
I think we should talk about, like, when you get rich fast, you tend to spend money rapidly. Again, it leaves.
You spend it as fast as you make it,
as it comes in. The route of an entrepreneur, you should, whether the business is rapidly successful and all or not, you as the entrepreneur, if your business is having rapid success, when your business is rapidly successful, you also have the risk that it's going to rapidly decline.
Mm-hmm.
Which means, again, for me, I always think about the long term. If you can get $5 to $6 million stashed away, your family never has to work again. You can invest it, and you could live off $200,000-$300,000 conservative. Likely with that type of portfolio, that's more like $500,000 to $600,000 a year indefinitely. Again, you still have portfolio allocations and whatnot, but realistically, again, not investment advice, but it's completely possible. That's the number for escape velocity, which we were talking about earlier, which means once you establish that, when you have a rapidly successful business, once you establish a portfolio of about $6 million, then you can wall out no problem from a financial advice because you've protected the downside of your family.
Question for you.
Yeah.
In that. So this is all obviously talking about the kind of leader that you are. Do you think, and maybe this is a question for Kirk, the HR guy, the people, if you are an owner and you decide that I want the finer things in life, and you go out and you make a decent amount of money, and then all of a sudden you show up with a nice house and a very nice car that you drive to work every single day, and you have not necessarily maybe compensated your people as appropriately, do you think that affects your leadership?
Ooh, good question. I like that question.
No,
No?
it doesn't affect your leadership. It affects your ability to lead.
It affects your culture. And we've had this conversation consistently with clients, often when they're doing about $30 million, and the owners can take out realistically about $1 million in free cash flow at the end of the year. That represents a problem of, do you still want to scale? Because at that point you have to bring in executive leaders, and executive leaders want a piece of the profit, whether through profit sharing or silent equity. They're going to want something that's like, I want more risk appetite. I want skin in the game. That's how you encourage them through incentive plans. And so realistically, if you start pulling money out, yes, it does represent your lack of leadership capability, but it's really the lack of your self-control, if you will, because you're taking money out of the business that should exist in the business for the intended purpose of growing. Again, if you no longer want to grow the business and you just want to pull out cash, perfectly fine. Then you don't need an executive team, and you can just pull out $1 million every single year.
But you got to still take care of because your employees will see that. If the business starts struggling and they know, hey, we need, I mean, it could be simple things. We need new vehicles. We need new equipment. And there's no money in the business to do that. And your lifestyle's increased, they know. So I want to go back to Kirk, because you said another altruism. Kirk's dropping bombs tonight. It doesn't affect your leadership, but it affects your ability to lead. Unpack that, because that, I know where you're going, but there's a lot there.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to earned credibility.
Yeah.
And you're always on display. As a leader, if you are leading well, your business is your platform. The platform is the stage. Your ability to use that platform wisely, it directly affects your ability to lead your people to that next level. Anybody in your business should be aspiring to the next generation of themselves.
Yeah.
And so if I'm coming into a business, granted, there will be team members that they are an incredible customer service representative, and they don't want anything to do with being a manager of customer representatives. That's completely fine. But you will have, I would say the majority, just culturally speaking, the majority of people have aspirations for more, and more could be a little more, it could be a lot more. You don't get to determine that, and that's the benefit of getting to know your people through the mechanisms of one-on-ones and getting ingratiated into their life personally and professionally. But if your life is out of alignment with your leadership, they're ultimately going to look to what you do versus what you say.
Yeah.
If Monday morning you are preaching grind time and you're 50 minutes late to grind time meeting, you're going to lose credibility with your Monday morning huddle. If the expectation is 8 to 5, 9 to 5, 9 to 6, whatever it is, and you're ducking out for track days, because nothing's wrong with that, but if the communication is not there, if the leadership isn't there, you're going to have a lot of people that are ducking out, whether physically, emotionally, or intellectually.
I think it's really good because people want to model what you're doing. So I'll give this because some business leaders are going to hear this, and some of you are thinking, well, it's my business. If I'm successful, I should be able to do whatever I want. Absolutely. But there's a cost to your leadership. So what's the other side of the coin? To some of what Kirk was saying, you don't want to be increasing your lifestyle, spending all this money, taking time off, while you're telling your team that they need to grind. So my personal goal and what I've committed that I'm going to do is if I'm going to splurge on something, say we're going to take a family vacation and we're going to spend 10 grand, or I'm going to go out and, you know, one of the things that I want to have, I like watches. So if I'm going to go spend 40, 50 grand on a Hublot or a Panerai watch, out of my personal money, I'm going to give generously the equivalent of that. So there's always a sense of balance. If we're going to increase our distributions in the company, I want the perception to be, man, every time AJ goes and increases his lifestyle or upgrades, there's always an upgrade in the company.
Yep.
So I know I want to double my salary, I want to double the executive salaries. Let's grow the company to a point where we can do that, and everyone feels the impact.
Yep.
Everyone got raises because they're all performing to that level. And a lot of business owners, they approach it selfishly. So going back to the matrix, this is that success quadrant where are you approaching success with gratitude? Hey guys, we did great. Bonuses, we're going to give back to you. Bless you guys. Are you staying grounded? Are you being generous with that? Are you using that wealth to serve the people who have served you to build that wealth? A lot of business owners seem to forget you're wealthy because of the people you hired who did a good job. Mm-hmm. Like, you didn't do all of this. Or are you handling success in arrogance and I'm going to just do what I want. I'm going to go buy a new Range Rover. I'm not worried about my plan. They're not getting raises. They're not even paid adequately. I'm just going to control all this money. And when they say that people want raises, I'm going to be resistant. Like, are you building a culture of generosity where the bigger you win, everybody wins? Is the trickle-down effect or the trickle-down economics of your business, is it generosity that overflows from you, or does it all flow up to you and nothing trickles down?
Yeah.
So
people want to be a part of something bigger than themselves, and
yeah.
So when we're talking about the top left quadrant, we're talking about this increase of lifestyle, which I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with that. I would also challenge that people want to be a part of something bigger than themselves, in the sense that if the business is doing well, how are we impacting lives
Mm-hmm.
outside of our four walls that we benefit zero from, other than being able to pour out of our excess?
Yep.
I mean, we talked about it at the very outset of this whole thing. It's not just about clients, and it's not just about business owners, not just about team members. It's about the eternal effects of what we're doing. And I mean, whether it's building sex trafficking safe houses in Texas, that was something that was very important, and I'm very proud of us.
Yeah.
You know, it's, what are people being able to be proud of?
Yeah.
Not just, you know, what messages you're putting out there in the metaverse, but it's really, you know, what are they being a part of?
Yeah.
Whether it's going to feed my starving children, or some other community event that is not about the pictures and it's not about the videos, it's about the impact. And they might not take anything other than memories out of that.
Yeah.
But I can tell you right now that some of my fondest work memories are more on the side of, we did this for this group of people, we impacted these organizations, rather than we increased the client's EBITDA by X number of dollars over the last 12 months.
And that's a key point. There's an interesting dynamic. We've said it all true. We've decided that the legacy in terms of what we'll brag about is that we won't brag about the money we make. We'll brag about the money we give away.
Yeah.
And the interesting dynamic is when in your organization, we've been a part of organizations like this where every morning, every month, bragging about, we made this much money, we collected this much cash, and we got this many new clients. And I remember always thinking, no, you made that much money. You benefited from that, because my paycheck still looks the same. I didn't benefit from that.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, and here's the dynamic, when we would do something generous or give away, I felt like I was a part of that.
Yep.
I contributed to giving away. So with your people, give generously in salary. We've committed, we will pay above market for the people we hire, because we want to hire people who were hired based on generosity. who work based on generosity, and then we give based on generosity. And when we give as a company, we can fully expect that that will be modeled down through our staff, and they will give. So if we give $1 million and then our staff is giving, they don't have $1 million to give, but they can still give. And it's about proportion. If they give, I mean, there's a story in the Bible of the wealthy religious man who went and gave, and I'll give you a little cultural lesson. In that time, they would put their offerings in these big ceramic vases. And so you could hear when someone gave. You would hear it was coins. There were no dollars. They would drop their coins. And so the wealthy man goes in, he drops his coins, and you hear lots of coins falling. Then you had this poor little old lady. She goes in and she drops a single coin. And the lesson Jesus told is he asked who gave more, and what he said was she gave more. Well, she only gave one coin, but proportionate to what she had, she only had two, and she gave one. She gave 50%. This other man gave 5%. So it's that attitude of the heart. We want to brag about what we give away.
I won't say not even just the giving away the money part, but the time, I think, is because time is the most valuable commodity that people have, right?
Yeah.
And so I know for me, some of the best outcomes in terms of culture turnarounds have been when I've seen organizations have a team concerted effort to go out and serve together, because then you're able to not only build a team camaraderie with that and get to know your colleagues, but then you're also having that boost of we're giving and feeling a sense of accomplishment together. To even better, which sometimes doesn't happen all the time, but when the executive team or even the owner is in attendance with that and the same level as a team, that speaks volume as to where they're at.
Yeah.
I've been to plenty of events, even throughout my career, where it was, hey guys, hey, come, we're gonna go and we're gonna volunteer our time and we're gonna have a great time. You come here and show up here for 2 hours. We're gonna do this. I'm like, okay, great, awesome, and they don't even show up. The owner is nowhere to be found, and they're like, and then they come back and say, wasn't it great that we spent our time doing this? We made this many meals for this many people. We made such a great impact. Like, don't you feel good about yourself? And I'm thinking, you didn't do that. We did that, but you didn't do that.
Yeah.
But not only that, I thought twofold is I'm upset that they didn't take the time to commit to working together with their colleagues and getting to know their team that's earning them money and giving them wealth. But then I also felt bad for them because they missed out on such a blessing that they could have had that they chose not to.
Well, there's this attitude with people like that. I remember seeing it in an organization that I was a part of. In the first year I was there, we would go out and do these charity events, and the one of the executive leaders, the president of the company, showed up and was there the whole time. And I was like, wow, that says a lot about this culture. But as time went on, the company grew and became more successful. That same leader showed up for a shorter period of time, to a point where it's like, you're just here for the photo op. You're here for the gram, not for the the giving. And I want to be a person, and I kept a note on my desk when I was a director and I had a team, and I would ask them and I would ask myself. It said, how dirty are your hands? Like, look at your hands. How dirty are they? Are you in the dirt enough that your team knows you're in it with them? Because you can't be in the dirt as much as them, so to speak. Because you have a responsibility to lead, you have to move around. But are you in there enough that they know you're in it? And I remember one of my leaders, 10, 15 years ago, some of my leaders got frustrated because I had this mentality of, I'll show up at the beginning or I'll show up late, the team's got it, they can handle it. And the team was frustrated. And so they talked to him, and he came back to me and gave me the feedback. And I was like I showed up late because I had these other things going on. And he said, you have to show up so much until your team tells you, dude, stop coming. We got it. At that point, that's your threshold. That's when you're showing up. When your team tells you, we got it. Or asks you, why are you here? We know you got more important things to do. So show up to that point. And be first in, be last out, until you raise up leaders who tell you, we know you don't need to be here. We know you have other important things to do. We got this.
It does sound counterintuitive, but I will promise you that does actually happen. Because I've had early in my career, I've built teams, and every day I was there before they got there, and I would say to the end, they could say I was working weekends, and they knew that I was giving all that I could to the team. And moments where I'm like, hey guys, I'm sorry, I gotta go. I just want to take a couple days of PTO. They're like, a couple days. No, take the week. We got it. Just leave, and we'll catch you when we get back. Go enjoy your family. So I do think that there is sweat equity that does go a long way. I would agree with that.
So going back to those quadrants, now we look at this aspect of what you should do and what that means. So a leader who shows up in humility, they're a gracious leader. When there's success, they inspire and they share. They use the success to inspire the team toward more success, and they share the credit. They share gratitude. They share the financial benefit and gain. You will never lose out by being generous financially with your team. Like, be responsible, map it out. Tim and I were talking tonight about commissions on deals. We want to be generous with that, but we have to map it out and model it so we can know how generous can we be without being financially responsible. Because if we're financially responsible, then we lose the ability to be generous. So it's managing that. If you approach success with arrogance, well, then you need to moderate and you need to focus. You need to moderate how you're showing up. You need to moderate how much credit are you taking, and focus on your team. Focus on going back to generous. Now, failure, in humility, you use failure to learn and build. A lot of leaders run from it. A lot of leaders become very self-deprecating. There's a strategy of being self-deprecating. I learned this as a speaker. If you want to win or create opportunity to gain the trust of an audience, you'll be self-deprecating. So comedians are masters at this. They will insult themselves throughout their set. Some do it to the point where it's, okay, dude, this is not funny. It feels like you're trying to say something here. But others, especially if there's a perception of you as a leader, and I say this with humility, I've had people say things to me, and I was talking to Kirk about this the other day. People say things to me because of just how I carry myself, this perception of AJ doesn't do anything wrong. AJ is just on it and has so much confidence. I have to intentionally be transparent and be vulnerable, because I learned to operate that way because I wasn't secure. So I learned I have to show up confidently, and I have to show up and inspire people. But no one's inspired by someone they perceive to never trip.
Yep.
So I would be vulnerable, and I would share in one-on-ones or whatever it was where I messed up and how I'm learning from it, because I needed the people I was leading to understand I'm not perfect. I mess up, and what they see then is the contrast. Oh, when you mess up, you learn from it, you show back up in confidence. If you can do that, I can do that. And I would share things with people that might take them back, and they would think, wait, you did that? Wait, you dropped out of middle school? Wait, you never went to college? Like, no. That's why I hired you, because I have no idea how to do what you're doing. And you earn the respect of people because they realize you don't feel the need to be above them. So I could go into a whole thing on that.
I believed you the first time you told me.
Yeah, Kirk. I didn't have to do that much with Kirk. He was like, this, no.
I think it's because they can one spot's one. So.
I will say, as soon as we started talking, this was 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is my person.
So I said, it takes
I probably said something stupid. That's probably what happened.
So the amount of time I made fun of him earlier. I had a relationship for being a homeschool kid. Because this is the first. Actually, he's probably one of the first homeschool kids I've ever met. Now, there's nothing wrong with homeschool again.
Homeschool kids are weird. If you're homeschooled, you know it.
Not all of them are. Some are. I feel like if they were homeschooled back when we were kids, there's a kind of concept. I've seen some weird homeschool kids, so I'm not gonna say.
I was that weird homeschool kid. Kirk was that weird homeschool kid. We just eventually learned to be less weird.
When I met you, I didn't think you were a weird homeschool kid. I've met some really weird homeschool kids. You did not give me that vibe of and I had no idea until you said that you were homeschooled. So I'm like, whatever training you guys had, you guys did it really well. So again, nothing against homeschooling. Our kids are homeschooled. I fully believe in it. I think it improves the intelligence.
We've had a lot of asterisks on this episode. Disclaimers.
We got to make disclaimers. Yeah. You're over good there giving stock advice. That's not stock advice. YouTube, it's not stock advice. But it is true. There's you got to show up in the right way in that humility.
I'll go for it.
I was going to say, I think one of the themes for February that we've really talked about consistently over the last 4-5 episodes is understanding where you're at as an individual and how you interact with your relationships with your significant others, with your leadership team, with your employees. And today's episode is a lot more how you interact with failure. As an entrepreneur, your job is to master how you respond to failure. And we were talking about this today. Humans have a natural response to fight or flight. And as an entrepreneur, you get to deal with that on a daily basis.
It's so fun.
Yes,
It
because
can be fun.
your team, whether that be your significant other, your executive leadership team, or your employees, are looking to you to go hunt on their behalf and kill for them, theoretically. And so, another disclaimer. And so, as we're thinking about how does the human body naturally respond to the fight or flight instinct, when we're looking at the 4 quadrants, it's the understanding that in perfect form, if you're hunting for an animal and you miss, and you have a episode of failure, if you immediately get angry and shoot 3 or 4 other times, the other opportunities that you have for success will run away.
Yeah.
And so when you're thinking about failure, start thinking about that. When you have a mistake, your next decision has a greater possibility of being another mistake because you are thinking about it from the stance of, I've already messed up, I need to recoup that opportunity. And that shouldn't be the stance. It should be pause for a little bit. Not doing anything is a stance. It is a response. And it's looking at and trying to be accountable to what did I make a mistake on, or what did my team make a mistake on, and how do I correct it and move forward.
That's important. I want to highlight that. Response versus reaction. This is something that we train in martial arts all the time, and I was teaching my 2 kids this. My daughter's 15, my son is 10. My daughter, just by nature of her personality, has the part of my personality that can react. And if I throw a ball at her, it's a reaction. And she's learning how to respond. My son, if I go up to him and I pretend to attack him, I'm always testing both of them. If I attack him, he immediately responds. He's going to block and he's going to hit me 3 times before I realize what happens. And I highlighted it to both of them and I said, you both have different mindsets. They're both strengths because, I told my daughter Naya, you will pause before acting and take more calculated action. But the weakness is you may be stuck in analysis paralysis. I said, my son, you will be quick to take action and you won't hesitate, but the weakness is you may impulsively act, cross the street without looking type of situation. So it's understanding where you're at and training your mind to respond rather than react. And so when we show you this matrix, what this serves as is a way for you to exercise the mindset before it happens. In martial arts, in sports, there's always the visualization aspect where you have to make decisions and practice the response before you're in the situation. And as a business leader, you can practice this every day. Who was successful and how can I show up in humility and praise that person without taking any of the credit? Where was their failure? How can I show up and take accountability for the failure? So don't wait for it. Manufacture it by looking for, even if it was a minor failure. There's a campaign that didn't go well and you created an ad for it. Go to the marketing team and say, hey guys, how'd that campaign go? You know it failed. Well, it didn't really go well. You know what? I take responsibility. What can I do better on the next video that I give you guys? How can we change the script so I can show up better to make it more successful? It's a little thing, but it has a massive impact in your team, and it gives you those reps in practicing how you show up. Because most leaders wait until there's huge success or significant failure, and then they react and they freak out, and then you're in a bad situation.
I would say again too, if you're gonna test them like that, again, I think there's nothing wrong with tests. I think it's actually really good. I used to do the same thing early on in my career when I was training non-accountants to be accountants. I would make an entry that's incorrect. I knew it, and I was waiting for them to fix it. And if they didn't catch it, it was a learning opportunity. If they did catch it, great. Now we can move forward with their skill set. I would recommend doing that with smaller things, not necessarily like a marketing campaign, because that could blow a ton of money out the window. But to a certain extent, having those ability to test your employees out to help them to practice that response. The thing I also encourage you for business owners, if you can respond and I would say you learn by seeing and doing, right? So if your employees and your team can see you respond, that will catch on.
Yeah. Create the scenario.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times react versus respond, we wait for the scenario to pop up, and then we have nothing left but to react.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we can create the environment, either for ourselves or for our team members, to where they're getting the necessary reps to shrink back from reacting and being able to respond out of experience. I do this with my kids, but the stakes are lower when it's a hypothetical. But if I give them enough of those repetitions, when the difficult question, the difficult dilemma, the things that they have to navigate on a day-to-day basis, if they've already made that decision 3, 4, 5 times,
Yep.
the first time sounds a lot easier. Same thing for our team members. If we can put them in scenarios, if we can role play a sales call, or if we can put them in scenarios where they're catching things inside of the QuickBooks or accounting software, we're creating those opportunities where the risk is low.
Yeah.
When the risk is high and the stakes are high, this is their 4th, 5th, 6th time navigating these dilemmas, and it feels like they're able to respond versus react. Or, in light of making the wrong decision or a campaign going wrong, they don't shrink back from responding. They don't shrink back from making it known and being transparent with the I won't even call it a failure, but the setback of the decisions that they've made. If they can feel like they can come to you with the setbacks and the stuff that doesn't go right or didn't go as planned, now you're creating this feedback loop to where, to your point earlier, we can coach to that. We can have opportunity to speak into their life at a deeper level than otherwise we would have if our first response would have been a reaction to something more devastating to the business.
Yeah, and I would say even since we deal with primarily home businesses or home services, I would say the home services stuff, if you have a tech that can go out in the field and practice those testings, that's a good time to start. Maybe not with obviously a large client, but having those small, minute options. I think that this skill is huge because this is the knowledge transfer we keep talking about from the owner to the next generation of leaders. Is if you take those scenarios and set up for testing, if you decide that you want to assign a project or you want to assign a client that may be a client that may be a difficult client to deal with, you're giving them the tools then from the industry knowledge and the experience inside your head to then train them so that they can become who you are, and that's the way you duplicate yourself. Which downside is it doesn't happen a lot, but the ones that does happen to, you rapidly scale.
Yeah. So we'll want to close with the question, but first I want to highlight something to make sure it's not missed. Tim, you talked about, you used the example of hunting, and you take the shot at the deer or whatever you're hunting, and you miss. And the knee-jerk reaction is take 2-3 more shots and try to catch it, but then you end up scaring away the other deer because the first shot, the other deer perk up. Like, what's going on? The next shot will scare them away. So I wish I had a video queued up already, but you think about when you drop a ball and you're chasing it, or any situation. Kirk had a situation a couple weeks ago. We finished the show, and he walked by the camera and tripped on the cord. And then the fight or flight kicked in. In retrospect, it would have been better for you to just pause and let everything settle. But instead, you tripped and then reached and then hit the camera and then reached again and knocked something else over. And every subsequent mistake just made the situation worse. We do that in life. Stop after the first mistake, and like you said, calculate your next move. Relax, breathe. Otherwise, it's a chain reaction. And again, I wish I had a YouTube video queued up of people doing things like this, where a sequence of things happens, and then at the end of it, it's just horrible. But had they just stopped after the first one, moved into that quadrant of humility and failure where you learn and build, it would have been a much better situation. So don't have those chain reactions. We'll leave you with this challenge. In your business, really simple. Take 30 seconds and do the 30-second leadership test. Do this often. Do it daily. Do it in the moment. The 30-second leadership test is this. Look at the transformational leadership matrix and ask the question, where am I right now? If there's success, look at it. If there's failure, look at it. And then decide where you're going to move and how you're going to respond. And ideally, it's in the place of humility at that top level whether it's success or failure, you're responding in humility, because that's where you have the most success, and that's where you're most likely to make decisions and take actions that lead to further growth in your company. So we really hope you guys have gotten a lot out of this whole leadership relationship series in the month of February. In March, we're going to call it Money March. We're going to go real tactical. We're going to talk how you generate more revenue, more profit, and really get real tactical with you. And every episode, you're going to leave with something you can implement that's going to grow your revenue, grow your profit, and help you get more clients whose lives you can impact and transform. So we appreciate you guys. Thank you for tuning in. And if you want to get the leadership matrix, I'll show it to you one last time. If you want to get this, just drop a comment. Drop whether you're Zoom or Facebook or YouTube, drop a comment, make sure you subscribe and follow us for every other episode, and sign up for Business Builders, and we'll get this over to you. So appreciate you guys. We love you guys. Have a good night.